Minimalists.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I am Ryan Nicodemus. And together, we are the Minimalists.
Welcome to episode 154. I believe it's 154. We're trying something new today. We don't have notes in front of us. We have questions.
We're winging it.
In front of us.
We're winging it.
Yes. And so what we did is we wanted to turn to our Patreon supporters and ask you if you had specific questions for us. So I reached out to you all this morning. And we're gonna call this episode Minimal because we're gonna answer questions about minimalism. I asked if our Patreon supporters had questions for the Minimalist, and I said,
have a question.
Please keep it to 2 sentences or less is what I asked them, and I'm gonna ask you to do the same thing, Ryan.
What does winging it mean? I mean, I know what it means, but where does that idiom come from?
I don't know.
Just winging it.
Yeah. Like, I don't know.
Someone comment on the video below and
on
let
YouTube?
us know where that idiom came from. Winging
yes,
it.
where if you're winging it, what does that mean exactly?
I mean, we know what it means. We just don't know where it came from.
Yeah, but why does it mean that?
Why does it mean?
What's the original meaning?
It has to do something with like airplanes.
What's the etymology of the word?
Or something.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway.
Shout out to the Wright brothers, Dayton, Ohio. Born and raised. All right. Our first question is from Irina, who did not listen to the 2 sentences or less.
Oh, my goodness.
I have a company which right now doesn't produce enough money in order for me to save up. I make enough to live, pay my rent, and buy food and pay bills. I also have a YouTube channel that sometimes brings some money. I am not sure whether to focus more on YouTube so that I can create another stream of income or try to find another stream of income. What would you do? Okay, so Ryan, I think if you're trying to do something creative, I would never look at it as a stream of income.
Yeah, I mean, yes, like looking at Irina. Looking at Irina's question, you know, she's got these talents, but trying to...
She has talents?
Talent. She has talents. And trying to find one of these talents to drive an income from, or a passion. Let's call it a passion, not a talent, but like, so she's passionate about something. I totally agree. Like looking specifically to make money off of a passion is not the best approach, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I thought Seth Godin did a podcast recently. He was talking about sequence, how sequence is important, and you don't, like, if you have a big spaghetti dinner in front of you, you don't take like a wet nap and wipe your mouth before you eat the spaghetti dinner.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
You wait until you've got the spaghetti all over you.
You're so smart quoting Seth Godin.
Sean, edit out the part about Seth Godin. I have this original thought about spaghetti.
About spaghetti. That's a brilliant analogy, man. I see exactly what that means.
In this case, the spaghetti is the creativity, right? And so express yourself creatively. Now, you may or may not be able to make a full-time or even part-time income from that creativity, but you might be able to make a difference in the world with that creativity.
Yeah.
And eventually, if you help enough people solve enough problems, then money will follow. People pay money for things. This is how capitalism works, is they pay money for solutions to what they perceive to be a problem.
Yes, if you add value to people's lives, they will go out of their way to support you. Like whether it's, I mean, when I think about when we first started the Minimalists, I mean, what did we make that first year? Like $28,000?
I made $23,000. I assume you made the same.
Yeah, we did. And it's just crazy how, you know, people didn't necessarily support us monetarily. Like, oh, you know, that you guys came out with a book. I'm going to buy, you know, 1 million copies of your book. But people, I mean, some people did do that, but other people also went out of their way to offer us a place to stay while we were on tour or take us out for a meal. Yeah. So, I mean, even though it wasn't like this direct stream of income from those examples, bringing us out to a meal, staying in our house, people still go out of their way to add value. So Irina, really what you've got to do is figure out ways that you can add more value. And then once you do that, people will go out of the way to support you. I mean, you could do something as simple as, we have a Patreon. And Josh and I go way out of our way to add as much value as we can to those subscribers. And Irina, you could do the same exact thing. I mean, if you're looking to expand your revenue streams, I mean, there's a million different ways to do it. You just got to find a way that is going to work best for you and your audience, and you know, just put it out there.
And if you're looking to be more financially secure in the short term, do something that's going to make you money. If there's if money is an outcome for you, I totally get that. It's always going to be part of the recipe.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to deny, like, well, don't ever worry about money. That's not what I'm saying here. It can't be the primary driver for your creative outlets, because you're going to forsake quality and creativity because you're trying to conform to a particular ideology, or you're trying to please everyone.
Yeah.
And so if you need to make money in the short term to pay off debt, to save up some money, then go drive a Uber or Lyft. Go find a way to get a side hustle. You know, our friend Chris Gillibo has a great podcast called Side Hustle, and he has a book called Side Hustle as well.
Yeah.
And he talks about people who set up these side hustles that may or may not become their full-time hustles, their full-time incomes, but it's enough to supplement what their regular income is. So I would definitely recommend that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and just to reiterate what I was saying at the beginning, when you take a passion and you challenge yourself, I shouldn't say challenge yourself, you put pressure on yourself to make money off of that passion. It is a very, that's a very good way to kill a passion a lot of the times.
Go back to episode 123. We did a podcast with our good friend Paul from Canyon City.
Yeah.
And we talked about hobbies. And one thing he did, he signed this big like record contract, and he was finally making a full-time living off of music. And by the way, he's one of the most talented musicians I've ever met.
Yeah.
And he signed this contract, and he was finally making a full-time living off of music.
Yeah.
Except it wasn't the music that he wanted to make, and it was just soul crushing for him.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways to kill your passion is to try to make an income off of it. Make that your primary driver, and watch your passion just die on the vine.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that we have not forced ourselves into doing that. Because if we did take on projects that we just felt like our audience was going to buy, or whatever, instead of doing it for ourselves, what we were really passionate about, we might find ourselves in the same situation that Paul was in.
Yeah, I mean, we could do the minimalist decluttering guide to decluttering. Here's 67 steps to declutter your home or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's just not appealing to us, right? Because we like to talk about the purpose and the why behind what we're doing. The how stuff is important, and you have to certainly inject it in there. We share our recipe. That's our how, and you can figure out what works well for you. Connor asks, what's one long-term goal / ambition you want to realize in the next year?
Within the next 365 days?
Yeah, or maybe let's just say by the end of 2019.
Okay. Oh, man. Well, we got to get this other documentary out.
Yeah, that's a big one for me right now. Like to me, so Ryan and I, for those of you who aren't aware of our sort of strategy, if you want to call it that, it's maybe it's anti-strategy in a way, because we tend to take on one big project at a time.
Yeah.
And that usually is like one per calendar year. And that shifts. And in fact, this one is shifting right now, because we finished this documentary, the second documentary, and we got the first cut, and we're like, wow, this is good. And that's the problem.
It's good.
We didn't want it to be good. In fact, there were parts of it that were great, but we want it to be outstanding. We want it to be the best we can do given the resources we have. And so we had to go back and say, all right, we're actually, during the month of October, we're reshooting certain segments of the documentary in different locations, so that we can look ourselves in the mirror and say, you know what? This is the best I could do. It's never going to be perfect. So I never have a goal or objective of perfection, because I'm always going to, that's the expectation part.
Yeah.
Instead of us having these crazy expectations, we just have really high standards for anything that we create.
Yeah.
And the next thing we're working on, we can't talk about yet.
Not yet.
But we, this is
the ink dry yet on that?
It is drying.
It's just drying right now. Okay.
We'll probably be able to talk about it early 2019. So our next big project is something different from this second documentary. And talking about not allowing money to be a primary driver, we signed a deal. I won't tell you what kind of deal.
It's a storage container business. Could you imagine?
Yeah, but they're tiny containers.
Yeah, they're tiny containers.
So you have to rent a bunch of them.
Oh my goodness.
And they cost just as much as regular containers.
Right, that's the beauty of it.
No, the thing is, like, we had this small sort of bidding war on this next project that we want to work on. And if money was the primary driver, we actually wouldn't have done the deal that we did, because there were other opportunities for us to make a whole lot more money off of this project.
I'm just kidding.
Off of this project, but it wasn't the right fit, because what we believe in is getting our creativity out there in a way.
We want a partner. We want someone who like believes in us. I mean, when I think about when we were looking for someone to represent us for PR. I mean, I talked to like 20 different people, and the reason why we ended up going with Sarah Minianci was because she was bought into us. I mean, she was actually, it wasn't like okay guys, if you want to get your book out, here's what I'm going to do for you. I mean, she was excited to work with us, excited to help us promote our book and to help us with our tour. And that's what we look for with anyone that we bring on the team, whether it's, you know, PR, whether it's a deal that we're talking about right now, the deal we're talking about, or Jordan or Sean. We're just Jess. Yeah, we want Jeff, Dave. We might as well name them all now. But yeah, anyone that we work with, money is definitely a factor. Like you said, it's always going to be a factor.
It has to play into it,
but that is not the number one driver.
Right. It's going to be an ingredient in the recipe, or maybe a better analogy. Money will be a passenger in the vehicle, but you don't want to let it drive.
Yeah. I mean, if that was the case, dude, we could like sell out and do advertisements on this podcast.
Yeah, but not just any
and retire.
There's probably a way we could do advertisements on this podcast that would align with our values. But if money was the primary driver, we would just do pre-roll, mid-roll, after-roll, and just like cram in 15 commercials about a bunch of stuff we don't care about, we don't use, whatever, and just cram it in, and act like we were excited about it too.
Yeah.
Drew asks, I just finished paying off my debt and saving for an emergency. I'm saving for an emergency fund.
Nice. Congratulations.
Heck yeah.
That is awesome.
I know I'm looking to move somewhere closer to work. Is it bad to spend a bit more for an apartment that has an extra bedroom that I want for a home office, or is it wasteful when I'm single but would still be saving 30% of my income even with the extra room?
There's not a black or white answer to that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are times when yes, you should save the money. It depends on what you're saving for. I mean, if I was in his situation, I would ask myself, what is it that I'm actually saving for?
Yeah, what is my outcome here?
Yeah.
Because maybe the outcome is I want to be more productive, and this office is going to help me do it. I think about our friend Rob Bell. One thing he did when he was living in Grand Rapids, and he was trying to protect his time for creating, because he was managing this large organization. He was working at a church, and the weird thing about becoming the creative person at a church, you're also the manager, and so like people are dragging you to all these meetings and stuff, and he found himself being like, he was losing his time to create. When we were sitting down with the Today Show yesterday, when they came out here to talk with us, one of the things you talked about with the gal Jo who was interviewing us is protecting your mornings. Yeah. And what you're really talking about is protecting this creative time, or this time for health, or whatever it might be. Yeah. And for Rob, what he did is he rented a just crappy office with just a desk and a chair in it downtown, away from home, away from his office at work. And it was just this office that was solely for creating. And he's like, I would go there and spend 2 to 4 hours a day, and as long as I was creating for at least a couple hours a day, then it was worth it to me, even though I had to spend a few $100s a month in order to do that. So if your outcome is creativity, Drew, then maybe it makes sense for that extra money. But is that creativity worth the money you're giving up that you could spend on something else? Is there something greater than that? And also, let's not fool ourselves and think we have to have the perfect setup in order to be creative. I think of Stephen King, and he wrote, I think, his first couple books in his laundry room because he didn't have an office.
So he was just hanging out in his laundry room.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think of some of the most creative times in my life have been with constraints. So I didn't have the perfect writing area. I had this crappy IKEA desk and a crappy chair, and it was facing a brick wall, not looking out a window. There was nothing pristine. I was in Dayton, Ohio, in this tiny little apartment, and I was facing a wall and writing. And it didn't matter I didn't have to have the perfect office with the potted plant and everything else. Creating is creating, regardless of your location.
Yeah, I think for me there's
a minimal maxim for you, podcast, Sean.
The most important thing for me is to just have as little distractions as possible.
Yes.
So, I'll right now I just sit on my sofa and I write when I do write, or I'll sit on the floor Indian style and tilt my computer up a little bit, so I can see it and just write on the floor. For me, it's not about the atmosphere as much as it is. Well, I mean, it is the atmosphere because you can clutter the atmosphere, but it's not about like being in these, having these certain parameters, being in this certain space. It's more about clearing as many distractions out of the way as possible when I go to write. So, if the solution for Brent,
Drew,
for Drew, sorry, Drew. So for Drew, for you, man, if having this office is the best way for you to create distraction free, then go for it, man. But you know what, Drew, like you're the only one that knows what is going to be best for you. The other thing too is you're saving 30% of your income. That's huge. What does Ramsey usually recommend? 25% to save?
Depends what you mean by saving. So one thing that he writes in his book, Smart Money, Smart Kids, and I think this is applicable to adults especially, but you teach your kids when they're young, and we're starting something like this with Ella now because she's finally starting to grasp the concept of money and that like the dirty pieces of paper in my pocket are actually worth something, and you have to earn those dirty pieces of paper. And so he has like 3 envelopes or 3 buckets basically. You have a savings envelope, a giving envelope, and a spending envelope for kids. And I think the same thing is true. So in terms of saving for your future, he tends to recommend 20% of your income.
Yeah, so saving 30%. I mean, Drew, you're 10% of what Dave Ramsey recommends, but I know like some people in the FIRE community, finance. I don't know what the acronym is. I don't know. Put it in the notes, podcast, Sean. But the FIRE community,
we're part of a documentary they've got coming out. We'll put a link to it. They have like a Kickstarter. It's about.
Oh yeah, that'd be great to put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah. So you and I sat down and we did this interview for the FIRE community, and it's really about. It's about
financial independence, retire early.
Yes,
that's what it is.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that community is made up of a bunch of different types of people who are interested in no longer letting money being the driver of all the discontent in our lives.
Yeah, and they like some of those guys in the community, some of those guys and gals, they will save upwards of 50% of their income. But see, they have different goals. Like Drew, what are your goals, man? Yeah. Like the people in the FIRE community, they are trying to get financial independence and retire as early as possible. So Drew, if that's your goal, then maybe you do give up that office to save a little bit more each month. Right. But if your goal is to not, just retire at, 55, 65, whenever a normal retirement age is, then yeah, get the extra bedroom and create the perfect situation for you to create in. I think
that's a really good point, because if our goal was to make money with this podcast, like you said, we would have put advertisements on it. We actually spend money to make this podcast, which seems counterintuitive, right? Because we rent this studio space here, we pay for all the equipment, we don't do any ads, we pay Podcast Sean, we pay Jordan, Joe Nomo.
Joe Nomo
is the YouTube consensus on his new nickname, and what the reason we're doing this though is because the message we believe in allows us to consistently share that message via this vehicle that is different from the other vehicles that we use, whether it's our books, whether it is our writing, whether it is our film or documentary, whatever it is. Like, we actually spend money to put this podcast out there every month. Thankfully, our Patreon supporters help supplement that. But
I was just getting ready to mention them, man. Like, thank God for them. They really help out with a lot of this.
I think once we get to 3,000 Patreon supporters, then we'll have enough to break even on this thing.
Then we'll be happy.
No, we're already happy, right?
Oh, okay.
We'll still be happy.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so if you do want to support us, I'll say this only once during this podcast. It's just theminimalists.com/support. We do a bonus podcast every week as well. It's called the Minimalist Private Podcast. We do a postscript episode. We also do Ask the Minimalists Anything episodes and live streams every month over there on Patreon. Silvio asks, I have a 5-month-old son, and so it's been 5 months since myself and my wife have had a good night's sleep.
Oh, man. It's been about 10 years for me, but anyway.
Do you have a 10-year-old son?
No, I just sleep like garbage.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. I think that's actually this would be a good time to talk about it. Josh, how has having a child changed your idea or practices as a minimalist? So, let me just say this: Ella is not a special needs child. She is a special wants child. She has very special wants, and she when she was really young.
Special once. I'm sorry, that's good.
I was going to say something earlier. When you talk about sitting cross-legged on the couch, are you afraid?
No, cross-legged on the floor.
Oh, are you afraid that that's cultural appropriation? And if so, what does your sister think about that?
I'm going to be honest. I don't believe in cultural appropriation.
Your sister doesn't get mad about it?
No, she doesn't.
She doesn't correct you or anything?
No, she doesn't.
Okay, that's good. So anyway, thankfully. So during Ella's waking hours, so not thankfully for this, when Ella was really young, especially before she turned 3, man, she was trying out for Al-Qaeda.
They're hurting for members, man.
Well, I mean, she clearly was top of the class. But thankfully, she sleeps like a rock, man. She sleeps 11 or 12 hours a night.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, and me too. And like,
I get tired just thinking about her sleeping for 12 hours a night.
It's unbelievable. But the rest of the day, she wakes up and she's an instant tornado. And she's like, what's that, Tasmanian devil?
Yeah.
That's pretty much Ella throughout the entire day. And then all of a sudden, she just crashes at night.
That's great.
So it works out well for her. But that's not answering Silvio's question. How has having a child changed your idea or practices as a minimalist? Well, I mean, I realized that minimalism, I knew this before, but it became more of a practice now. Minimalism is not about deprivation. You and I say that all the time, but I remember at first, like, I kind of wanted, well, Ella, kids don't really need any toys. They're happy with whatever they have. And I was really just projecting my own childhood onto her, like, because I didn't have many toys. Or the ones I did were crappy. Although in my neighborhood, I had more toys than anyone else. That's how I made all the friends.
Dude, you had a Sega Genesis, man.
That's how I made literally all the friends in the neighborhood, because they would come over and play Sega Genesis.
I thought you were rich. Because you had a Sega Genesis.
We were on food stamps and I was rich. That's hilarious.
God, dude.
Yeah.
Anyway, Toe Jam and Earl.
Yeah. Yes. Oh man, we were good at Toe Jam and Earl. All right, we're patched back in after that commercial break.
Yes.
I mean, how has minimalism changed, or how's having a child changed my idea of simplicity or minimalism? I've realized that minimalism is not about deprivation. I knew that in theory, but now I know it in practice, because I don't want to deprive Ella of having the things that she wants. Now, the average child has 300 toys, but plays with only 12 daily.
Wow.
That tells me something here. That is a metaphor for our own lives, because the average adult has 300,000 items and plays with 12,000 daily. I don't know what the number is, but like it's not even that, right? Of course. And so we just tend to accumulate more once we get older, and we're allowed to accumulate more. And so Ella has toys. I take Ella to the toy store, but I also instill the practice of contributing to her as well. So we go to the Goodwill once a month and we let go of some stuff that she's no longer playing with. And she doesn't realize, like, I'm just getting rid of this stuff. So it's not me explaining the theory of contribution to her, because she's not going to understand that. She's 5. But what she does understand is, hey, I'm not playing with this anymore. I can see another kid playing with it, and I understand that I don't need this anymore. And if I get rid of this, I can bring new toys into my life that I will like, that I will enjoy.
Isn't it crazy, like, how kids love to help, man? Like, whether it's like, with anything, they just love to help. But especially with contribution, I could see where that would be exciting for Ella, or at least being able to understand, like, oh, like, I'm going to give this to another kid.
They really love to help. I mean, they want to hit the garage door button. They want to, like,
everything,
turn the key. Like, they want to help with everything. And the same is true with contribution. And so the thing that I've learned is, yes, Ella does great with a box of toys. But if she had 10 boxes of toys or 100 boxes of toys, she's not going to be 10 times or 100 times happier. In fact, especially with someone like Ella, who has it's called SPD, sensory processing disorder, and she just gets overstimulated by sensory items, especially physical items and loud sounds.
I didn't realize that.
Loud sounds and bright lights. Her first words were "mine eyes."
Mine eye.
Yeah, because the sun was bright. She goes, "Mine eyes." Those are her first words.
What is she, like, reading Shakespeare or something?
Yes. Yeah. So the clutter with her is actually it like with me, it stresses her out. And so we make sure that she has just the appropriate amount of toys, and if she stops playing with something, then I don't donate it, she donates it.
So there's someone who's going to ask, what is the appropriate amount?
Well, it's 12 daily.
It's 12 new toys daily.
No,
and I'm not actually asking for a number.
Well, no.
The reason why I bring that up is because the number is the appropriate amount. There isn't a number that you can spread across the board with every child and say, this is the appropriate amount.
Yeah. Well, I did a whole video on this with Ella, actually, on our YouTube channel. It's we did one of the living room conversations. Sean, if you can put a link to that in the show notes. We talked about how many toys kids should have, and I had Ella talk about it. She was playing her trumpet on the video as well. And so we were playing like fire truck and hospital on the she likes really gory things, which is disturbing. Like she's like, we went to go like buy some, like, what are those called, Playmate, the sort of play sets that you put together. Is that Playmate? I think something like that. Yeah. Anyway, we went and bought it, and she was like going, I want the surgery room, and I'm like, okay.
She wants to be a doctor.
Yeah, she's like, I want
a serial killer. One or the other.
I want the morgue. How do you know that word? All right, our next question is from Connor. This is a different Connor. This is Connor with an O. The previous Connor was Connor with an A. Connor asks, how do you find happiness when you're stressed? This is from Connor Boyd.
Ooh. Man, happiness is
not the point.
Yeah, it's a misnomer, I feel like, because, I mean, it's written in the Constitution, right? Like, everyone has the right to pursue happiness.
The pursuit of happiness, not the right to happiness.
Yeah, it's, God, the pursuit of happiness can be, I don't know, can be a deflating goal, because because I feel like in the corporate world I was continuously chasing happiness.
Sure. And
I would get a new car, or I'd go on a vacation, or I'd buy, I'd upgrade my computer, whatever it is, upgrade my TV. I was kind of chasing that happiness, but the more I chased it, the further away I got from it.
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm stressed, it's not about how can I be happy. Because, well, first off, stress is important. Like, I don't want to live a stress-free life.
No, I mean, that sounds like death almost.
Yeah,
right?
like I want a little bit of friction. I want to have I want to have the ability to have a little bit of stress, because someone told me in the corporate world one time, because I was complaining about how stressed out I was, and they were like, Ryan, a little stress is good for you, and I agree with that. I did not have just a little bit of stress though when we were in those jobs. But I do agree with the statement that a little bit of stress is good, because stress is an indicator that something is wrong. Your body is telling you, hey, you need to do something different. You have to take a different approach with whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah, there's good stress and bad stress. You exercise 5-6 days a week.
Of course I do.
I mean, you lift all, oh my God. Be careful. Be careful. Put those guns away.
Jordan, do not put that in the video.
Shout out to the YouTube audience. Oh, there's going to be lightning bolts coming off of your biceps. It's going to be
Actually,
great.
What you need to do is like CGI, like Arnold Schwarzenegger's arms.
I'm going to put cans of spinach.
Do we have yes? Do we have any CGI programs?
I don't know. I don't even know what that means.
Dude, we don't. You know what? CGI means we wouldn't have to be here, man. He could just CGI us in.
We could do holograms. Now that I think about it.
All right, I'm digressing. Sorry.
Yeah. So where was I going?
I
with
work
this?
out.
Yeah, you work, and that's a good kind of stress. You had to put enough stress on your body that you grow. So there's a certain amount of stress that you grow. If you were to work out 7 hours a day, your body's going to break down. You're going to atrophy. So it's a bell curve.
That's a good analogy.
And as you grow, you can put more of the good kind of stress on you, as opposed to now physiologically and psychologically, quite often your body does not know the difference between good stress and bad stress. Psychologically, you can parse it out, right?
Sure.
But the physical the physiology of stress is going to be the same, even with good stress and bad stress. So you even have to be careful with the good stresses in your life, so not to get too much. You use the word friction, though. You want some friction in your life, and you need enough friction in order to create traction in your life. Because if you don't, I think about when we were driving on the roads in Montana and it's so icy, there's no traction at all. Because there's no friction.
Right.
It's frictionless. It's black ice, and you're going to, I mean, literally, someone ran you off the road because they hit a patch of black ice,
right,
and your car flipped because they didn't have enough friction that created the traction to propel you forward. And so, yeah, I think keep that in mind. So happiness is often a fruitless pursuit. In fact, we mentioned Chris Gillibo once. We did a podcast with him. He had a book come out that was called... So you just mentioned the Constitution, right? Everyone has the right to the pursuit of happiness.
Yes.
His book is called The Happiness of Pursuit.
Oh, yeah.
And so think about that. The real happiness, the real contentment for me comes from the work or the creativity, the production, the passion itself, the pursuit. In fact, think about that. Quite often we pursue these things thinking it's going to make us happy one day, but then you get there and you feel empty. Well, why is that? Because you thought the outcome is what was going to make you happy. It's not the outcome that's going to make you happy. It is the pursuit. It's enjoying the pursuit, and it's become platitudinal at this point where you're like, okay, yeah, enjoy the pursuit, enjoy the journey. Yeah, that's true, but really find ways to do something that you do enjoy. It's the reason writing is so appealing to me. Like, there's this old platitude that actually doesn't make any sense to me personally. Writers don't enjoy writing, they enjoy having written.
Yeah.
I'm the exact opposite, man. Because when I write, there's a good chunk of the time, 10 to 20% of the time, where I get into this like euphoric state where everything is firing on all cylinders. But it takes half the time I want to put my head through a wall. The other 30% of the time, it's like, yeah, this is going pretty well. I feel good about sentence structure, and all of a sudden, it starts clicking. I'm getting that flow state, is what some people call it. And as that happens, I like there's no better feeling other than sex, and like you just get going and going. That is the pursuit. Having the thing written, I can go back and look at the novel that I wrote. And like cringe at parts of it. There are parts of it I could absolutely say, wow, I don't know how I wrote that. It's beautiful. There are other parts where I'm like, As a Decade Fades was a good book considering I wrote a lot of it in my mid-20s, over a decade ago.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of stuff I do when I stress out too much. I'll give you an example. We were heading to the airport about a week ago, Mariah and I were, and we got into the car. We needed to be to the airport in about 45 minutes. We got into the Uber, and the Uber driver was like, all right, we'll be there in about an hour. And I was like, oh, man, like knowing that we were going to cut it really, really close to going to the airport. But then, of course, as we're driving, like I'm going through what Dan Harris talked about in our documentary with, okay, I know that I need to stress a little bit because we do have to be on time at the airport, or as on time as possible. Sure. I do want to, let the driver know, like, hey, not your problem, but if you could help us out, we're trying to get there as soon as possible
without being a jerk about it.
I'll make sure to give you a big tip. Just wanted to, see if you would be willing to, kind of pay a little bit extra attention and, whatever, drive a little faster, whatever.
Right.
He was totally amicable. But even on the way to the airport, though, like he was doing everything he could. I was still like just stressing out a lot. He put on some jazz music.
Yeah.
I had no idea how soothing jazz music was. It was like
totally changed your state, right?
Totally changed my state, man.
Classical will do the same thing. You know who really does it for me? Sigur Rós.
Yeah, I can see that.
I have this Pandora playlist. In fact, I pay for Pandora every month because in the mornings I like to just put on my Sigur Rós playlist. And it recommends other songs as well, and it calms my. And Ella even's like, it's soft, soothing music.
Oh, mine ears,
mine ears.
But no, so with this question, how do I be happy when I stress out? I think the question needs to be reframed a little bit.
Yes.
how can I avoid the really bad stress in my life?
Yeah.
So, or how can I avoid over stressing? And that's where I would start with this question. To do that, yes, do things like listen to some jazz, listen to some cigaros, meditate. Meditation is this morning I was doing it. Man, I was flipping out this morning because like I just had a really bad night of sleep. I just, a bunch of little stupid things, spilt my cup of coffee, whatever, just a bunch of little stupid things going on.
Yeah.
And because of the lack of sleep, I just like wanted to put my fist through a wall.
Right.
But I like just sat on the couch for like 5 minutes, just did some breathing, like in through the nose, out through the mouth. And like I'll start counting like, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out. But even, after a minute of doing that, I forget to count and I just, start relaxing a little bit. So, any little things that you can do like that to help you, to help curb the stress. But, approaching that question with how can I stop the stress and then insert happiness? That's just, to me, that's a very poor expectation.
Yeah, definitely. And that actually bridges right into the next question here. Kenneth asks, what do you wish you had done earlier in your process to minimize quicker / become happier quicker? Here's the thing, guys. Happiness is the wrong pursuit. Happiness is ephemeral. And if you're always chasing ephemeral things, then you're always going to feel the pang of discontent. Tweet that podcast, Sean. And so the thing that I'll add on top of that, the right pursuit is a more meaningful life. And so instead of pursuing happiness, pursue what a meaningful life means for you. Not the meaning of life. That's another difficult question. I saw a bunch of people ask us that question on Twitter today for the lightning round. I've got a couple Twitter questions. Several. What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? I don't know. I'll divulge or digress into a nihilistic sort of rant, if you ask me that. I mean, I'll say that growth and contribution is ultimately the meaning of life.
I think there's no point to life, and it's actually freeing for me to realize that there isn't a point to any of this.
Well, I mean, it depends on what we mean by point, right? Yeah. And so maybe there are better questions than this. The meaning of, what's the meaning of life is not a great question. How do I become happier all the time? Bad question. And the better question is, what does a meaningful life look like to you? Now, for me, that means my values. I'm really clear on what my values are, and my actions align with what those values are. And whenever I slip, whenever I fall off the path, then all of a sudden I realize that discontent is coming from not because all of a sudden I'm not happy, but because my values are not being met in a way.
So, Kenneth, with your question here, man, if Josh and I could give you a pill right now, we'll send you a pill in the mail. It'll make you as happy as you've ever been. They do have pills for that. It's called MDMA. And then you take the MDMA again the next day, and then you take it the third day, and then you take it the fourth day, and then you take it the fifth day. It will start to become your new norm. So I guess maybe a better way said, the MDMA example is not my best example.
No, it's a great example because there's a crash after you take MDMA.
There absolutely is a crash.
So talk about that, because people go to Burning Man and they take MDMA for 2 or 3 days, and all of a sudden they're like, they're miserable for several days. That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. In that sense, it is. The other thing I was going to say too, though, is, so Kenneth, even if Josh and I could flip a switch right now and make you wake up every morning ecstatic, that's manic.
Yes.
And manic people, like at their, at the extreme version of it, like people who are truly, truly manic, like happy and excited about life. Well, they're a lot of the times they are out in the street directing traffic. and
they haven't been asked to direct traffic.
Right, exactly. Like Kenneth, you don't want to be in the street directing traffic because that person who is extremely manic, they're in the street, they're happy about life, and they're like, oh, I can help traffic flow better. I'm just going to go ahead and take initiative and do this.
Yeah.
A truly happy person is, when I say truly happy, an extremely happy person would be manic, and manic at its terminus is a mental illness. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, my father was manic depressive, and he had those fits where he, and he was also schizophrenic, so he had full-on happy conversations with people who did not exist in the real world.
Right.
and yeah, you don't want to be there. But what does a meaningful life look like to you? What are your values? Go back and listen to our values podcast episode. It's episode 69. And if you want to get really clear on your values, my partner and I, Rebecca and I, we go through our values all the time, and she has like a little one-page worksheet based on what we go through. It's minimalwellness.com/values.
I feel like we really wasted episode 69 on the episode values.
Hey.
But hey, well, hold on.
Well, we already did the sex episode. That was with Chris
I know,
Ryan.
that should have been anyway.
We should have waited till 169.
There's one more thing I want to add.
Okay.
And maybe you said this and I missed it, Milburn. But if you pursue a meaningful life, if your short-term actions are aligning with those long-term values and beliefs, the beautiful thing is you do have happiness as a byproduct. It is not, you're not going to wake up every single morning and, ride to work on a unicorn going down Rainbow Road. But you will find more meaning to your life. And when you are able to do things that are good for yourself, whether it's health, or whether it's bringing in good relationships, or whether it's contributing beyond yourself, after you do those things, that's when I feel happy, is when I have those actions, when I take those actions that are in alignment with those core values.
But and the key there is that wasn't the ideal outcome. It was the byproduct itself, right?
Absolutely.
Happiness is fleeting.
Happiness is, yeah.
Fulfillment is the goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, and there isn't even a goal for me. Like, I don't want there to be a goal. I want there to be a direction.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing is what is my direction? My direction is to live a more meaningful life, to grow in that direction. And yes, I'll be happier more on the aggregate when I'm living a meaningful life. I could do a whole bunch of really stupid, irresponsible stuff and be happy in the moment, right? Mm-hmm. But eventually, you're just like, oh, why did I do that?
Yeah.
And longer term, the aggregate happiness is going to be much less when you do that. Our next question is from Kim. This is hilarious. Why are you, the Minimalists, so amazing at offering practical and valuable advice?
Because it's funny, man. Like, I feel it's such an honor, man, to like be able to tell our stories and to tell our opinions and like people to find value in them. But the reason why we have, good advice and maybe good opinions that people perceive and find value in is because we've screwed up so much in our lives. Yeah. And I don't know about you, Josh, but I do continue.
And our parents screwed up a lot too.
Yeah, I continue to screw up too. And I like talking about those screw ups and helping other people learn from them. I mean, when I think about my upbringing, there are certain things that I will avoid altogether because of the example that was set for me on how not to do things, essentially. Yeah, I'm trying not to get too granular here because, like, I don't want to, like...
You have a temple. Well, my parents are dead, so I can talk about it.
Right. But what I'm saying is like, there are certain things that I saw friends or friends of the family or family members do and really cause them a world of hurt. And I'm actually really grateful that I learned those lessons through them instead of learning them myself. And
so there are some lessons that you will only learn through your own experience, sadly, but try to learn as many lessons from other people. I mean, ultimately, it has to do with a body of knowledge. It drives me crazy when I see so many 23-year-olds who are becoming life coaches. Most life coaches have no life experience.
I'm 37. I don't even feel qualified to be a life coach.
Right. Yeah. I feel like that's the thing. You mentor people. You have this mentoring business on our website, and
mentoring's different because like I can speak from my own experience and hey, this is how I've done things. This is how I've made things work.
Right. It's a recipe.
But I am not qualified to be a life coach.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where I see these really like young people who aren't living congruent with the advice they're giving necessarily. And I think ultimately I take my own advice first and then I share that recipe with other people. Yeah. It's the reason why very rarely do I talk about my problems unless I have found out some sort of solution. Although last week on the podcast, we were talking about I had some certain trauma I had to deal with, and I don't have a solution for that yet. And so I went into a little bit of depth on it to let people know, hey, yeah, I still have issues and problems. And
yeah, we don't wake up every morning manic.
Right.
Like we still have to deal with stress.
Yes.
We still have to deal with emotions, with the negative emotions. Minimalism is not about getting rid of those negative emotions. It's about learning how to live in the real world with those emotions.
Yeah, and quite often it starts with the stuff for us, because the material possessions are a physical manifestation of what's going on inside us. And so with those things, once we deal with that external clutter, we're able to start tamping down the internal clutter, the mental clutter, the spiritual clutter, the emotional clutter, the psychological clutter that's going on by dealing with that external stuff. Because for whatever reason, as human beings, we are so focused on the externalities, the facade, the accumulations, the trophies of so-called success, that we ignore what's going on inside us. In fact, I've talked to several Buddhists about this, and some of the previous questions we answered here, you could maybe replace the word happiness with excitement. Like, how do I be excited all the time? It's sort of the same thing.
Yeah.
Buddhists, they avoid the negative emotions like depression and sadness. Let's just say sadness, but they also avoid excitement.
Yeah, they call it the middle way, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, I totally agree, man. It's like avoiding both extremes. Like taking that middle way is the best way to avoid like you said with the MDMA. You have an extreme happiness, you're going to have an extreme sadness eventually. Yeah,
it was this Matt Carney line, one of our favorite musicians. He in his song he said, "I'm trying to feel the highs without the lows," and like that's the problem.
Yeah.
And if you want to feel the extreme excitement, you're going to feel the extreme downside as well. And so I instead try to find that middle way, and it will certainly oscillate between happy and sad or whatever, but there are certainly more great days for me now, more outstanding days, even with all the problems that I've had over the last several years with my health, than if I weren't living intentionally.
Yeah.
JB asks, how have you learned to sit with discomfort after removing your pacifiers? Any practical tips? Or does the arrival of discomfort always signify that you need to change something? No, discomfort often signifies growth, right? In fact, you want to sit in the discomfort zone, as Jonathan Franzen in his memoir is called The Discomfort Zone. And that's the place from which you grow, is when you're, because imagine if you were to like rephrase this question, Ryan, what do you learn from sitting in absolute luxury and comfort? Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true, man. You have to make yourself a little bit uncomfortable to grow. Going back to working out is uncomfortable.
Yes. Like, in fact, yeah, Sam Harris talks about this. If you imagine the pain that you feel from working out, especially like the day after, if you have a really, I can look at you right now and tell you do a lot of bench pressing.
I do all the bench presses.
But like, if you have a really like heavy chest day or squat day, and your legs are on fire the next day, you know what I'm talking about?
I do so many squats, but I still have no butt. I don't understand. Yeah. All right, keep going. Sorry.
And so
yes, lots of squats.
Yeah, your legs are on fire the next day, right? Imagine if you hadn't done that, you would, and you felt that pain, you would think you were dying.
Yeah.
And so you also, the discomfort you experience is perspectival in a way where you realize, like, I've created this discomfort so I can grow.
It's funny too, man. Like, you think about a massage and like those deep tissue massages after the massage. I feel so good. But like during that massage, there is this uncomfortable, downright sometimes like painful moments.
Have you done rolfing?
Oh no, that's just straight pain.
Yeah, I've had it done on my legs because I have really tight thighs and
yeah,
not
you do.
thighs, but calves and shins. My shins are especially tight, and so
I didn't know you did that. How painful was that?
Scale of 1 to 10. 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just like a constant 9.
Well, no, there's like you have to have like breaks. So do something. And it's like like literally screaming.
Oh my god! Could you imagine like
and
that being your job as a rolfer? Like just listen to people scream all day long.
Yeah, but if you're a sadist, like it's the perfect job for you. But like,
Any status out there looking for a new line of work, become a rolfer.
yeah. So for those of you who don't know, rolfing is like really, really, really deep tissue massage, and it's painful. But I mean, I couldn't walk for 2 or 3 days straight afterward. But the relief I got for several months after that, loosening up the scar tissue in my legs, it was amazing. But there were bruises all over my shins for several days after that.
Dude, I'll tell you, man, when we were on the Kevin Rose podcast, he brought up I don't know if he said it on the podcast or if he was just kind of talking about it with us.
That's out right now, by the way. So if you all want to check it out, we flew up to Portland just to hang out with Kevin Rose at his house. It was a lot
awesome.
of fun.
So he had such a huge house, but it was a minimal. It was still
aggressively minimalist.
Aggressively minimalist. It was
beautiful. It's like one of my favorite houses I've ever been in.
It's unbelievable. But I don't know if he said this on the podcast or if when we were just having conversation before we did the podcast, but he said something along the lines of, he's like, yeah, I've just always been the type of person where, I look at something like boredom and like that makes me uncomfortable. And then I tell myself, yeah, you know what? I'm going to get comfortable with boredom. So then he talked about how he went out of his way to make himself bored so he could figure out how to start to get comfortable with being bored.
Yeah.
And to me, finding those uncomfortable areas, I actually like seek those out. I mean, not 100% of the time, 24 hours a day, but there are like that totally inspired me to. Well, I mean, I haven't really talked to you about this yet, but I eventually like I want to take by myself. I want to take like a week, and I want to go to like a container home in Montana or something, and just I want to be as bored as I have ever been in my life, just to see how comfortable I can get with it.
Yeah.
And almost like a reset too, maybe like or maybe a silent meditation retreat.
Yeah, I can talk to Dan, or we can talk to Dan about it.
Yeah,
Dan Harris,
and do something like that. But I think about too when we moved to Missoula, I remember I got plugged in relatively quick. It took me a couple 3 months before I found a community of people and like some friends and stuff. But there was this time where it was just you, Colin, and I, and you and Colin, being the introverts that you are, didn't want to always hang out.
Yeah.
Me being the extrovert, I was always bugging you guys to hang out. But what I realized is like, okay, like I want to respect these guys, their time. I want to respect their needs. So I'm not going to like sit there and ask them to do everything. So I'm going to go and I'm going to try to do stuff by myself. And I went out like for the first time in my life when we moved to Missoula, I went to a movie I started to go to movies by myself.
Yeah.
And I remember you and our rest in peace, one of our good friends, Stan Dukes, you guys always talked, oh yeah, I went and saw this movie. And I'd ask you guys, oh, well, who did you go with? Oh, I just went by myself. And to me as an extrovert, I'm like, that is weird. Why would you go to, you just kind of weirdo going to the movies by yourself?
I prefer going to the movies by myself.
Right.
I might go do that after this podcast.
So what I did is I started to go to movies by myself. I started to put myself in this discomfort zone so I could get used to just being with myself, being comfortable with myself.
The boredom the perceived boredom. And that's the thing. Sure. Once you realize, one of my favorite books is The Pale King by David Foster Wallace. And it's a book about boredom. It takes place in Peoria, Illinois in 1985, predominantly in the IRS office. I mean, there's an entire chapter of people just turning pages in the chapter. Yeah. But it's what you realize is there's also beauty in the boredom because the book is written so beautifully. I mean, it's every sentence is gorgeous. And you realize it's a boring book, but it's a beautiful book, and there's something beautiful within the boredom. And it's the same thing that Buddhist monks realize, that it's not actual boredom. It's not, boredom doesn't exist. There's no such thing as boring, only boring people.
Yeah.
And once you realize that, like, you can realize you can be completely content and satisfied just in your own mind.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Alston Carter. I wonder if this is our Alston. Is this him? He left this question. Shout out to Alston. He manages the building in which our studio is.
Yeah, he manages WeWorks without the S.
Wait. It's not. You don't need to say that. It's like, I went to Walmart's to buy some toilet paper. It's such a Midwestern thing.
It really is. Adding S and everything. Anyway.
Yeah. So Alston says, why do you do what you do? Have you ever doubted following the path that you're currently on? I mean, it depends on what you mean by do what you do, right? It's one of the, in fact, this is a better way to ask this question than the way we typically ask the question is, what do you do?
Yeah.
Because, man, can you imagine how uncomfortable you make someone, though? If instead of saying, what do you do? We say, why do you do what you do?
Hi, I'm Ryan. Why do you do what you do? Yeah.
It reminds me of the Rob Bell parable. Well, I think it's an old sort of, I don't know, Iraqi parable or something, or Hebrew parable, but like the rabbi is walking to the gates of the Roman city, and he stopped there, and the Roman guard says, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And the rabbi goes, "Excuse me?" He says, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" And the rabbi goes, "How much are they paying you?" And the Roman soldier goes, $100 a day. And he goes, "Well, I'll pay you twice that to come to my house every morning and ask me those same two questions."
That's so good.
And because we often don't think of these like, they almost seem like remedial questions, elementary questions, where it's like, well, who are you and what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Oh my God, the profundity in that. And the same thing with Alston's question here. Why do you do what you do?
Man,
now,
why do you do what we do?
I'm driven to create.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's the act of creating that really brings me joy and fulfillment. And I do what I do because it aligns with my values. It's a beautiful accident that we reached this path. Mm-hmm. Initially, when I left the corporate world, I wanted to write fiction full time. And I published my novel around that same time, using a lot of the writings that I wrote throughout my 20s. And that helped me pay off some debt that I had. And at the same time, though, when we started the Minimalists.com, it was like, hey, this is a different vehicle through which I can write. I want to write. Maybe I don't just have to write fiction. I can be creative and write nonfiction, write blog posts, and maybe eventually write nonfiction books, which we did. But then I realized, like, oh, it's not just the vehicle of writing. There are other better ways to communicate with people. Writing is a great way to communicate with one set of people. A podcast is another way to communicate with a different set of people. Film is another way to communicate with other people. Social media and then YouTube is another way to communicate with people. And so ultimately, I do what I do because I enjoy the act of creating.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know this sounds like really like lame and cliche, but I just want to save the world, man. I mean, if I could, I would. But you know, I know that that's impossible.
So maybe it's about saving some people.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, and I don't want to confuse that with like making a dent in the universe.
Okay.
Because that's not what I'm trying to do as much as I am driven to help people on a daily basis. Yeah. And you know, in our old corporate job, that was about 10% of my job was to help other people, maybe, 20%, but regardless, that's where I wanted 100% of my attention to be.
That was the most fulfilling and rewarding part for you, right?
So this the Minimalists, this just happens to be a vehicle that I use to really help people. And I know that's such a cliche. What's your passion? I just like to help people. But it really is my passion, and I have found a way to do it. So have I ever questioned the path that I'm on? Man, I wish I had a sexy answer for this. No, I haven't. Because ultimately, dude, if we couldn't do the podcast anymore, we couldn't sell books. Mm-hmm. I couldn't do the mentoring program. You couldn't do the writing class. Yeah, we couldn't do speaking engagements. I mean, if everything was taken away from us, and it very well may be one day. I mean, anything's possible, right?
Absolutely.
But the thing is that if that did happen, I would still be a huge supporter of minimalism. I wouldn't look at minimalism and say, oh, well, everything got screwed up and minimalism turns out it wasn't the answer. It's like, when Jo Ling was interviewing us yesterday for the Today Show, and she said, oh my God, I totally forgot where I was going with that. I had like my ADD self just like totally wrecked my train of thought. But God, what was I just saying?
Well, you were talking about the path you're going on. If minimalism all collapsed, it's not that you would say, well, minimalism sucks now.
Right, exactly. So, man, I forget the question she asked. Tag on it.
So here's I have a different answer from you. I question it all the time. I question the path I'm on, and I think it's important for me to do so, because otherwise what's going to happen for me is I could see myself just going down a path because it's become second nature for me. And if I don't question it, then I'm just going with the flow. Oh yeah, and I've done this from time to time where I accidentally say yes to too many things, and I've had to get really good at saying no. And the way that I do that is by asking the question, like, is this the best use of my resources? And we have the acronym for our 5 most precious resources, right? The STEAM acronym. Our skills. So is this the best use of my skills right now? Is this the best use of my time? That's a T. Is this the best use of my energy? I'm putting all my energy into this. Is this the best use of that energy, or could I use it somewhere else? So that's asking that question. The A, is this the best use of my attention? This takes all of my attention. If I want to do this well, I better give it all of my attention. And then my money. We're paying to put this damn podcast out there. Shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you. but we're paying to put this podcast out. Is this the best use of my money? And right now, because I am driven to create, and this is one creative vehicle for us. I look at our creative vehicles as a tripod. The writing is first for me, the podcast is second, and the video stuff is third, and those change from time to time. Right now we're heavily focused on our second documentary, so that at one point will be the top priority for us. In fact, in terms of creating, it's the number 1 priority for us right now. But in terms of getting out into the world, it will eventually be the top priority. So yes, I'm questioning that path every day to make sure that either I need to pivot paths a little bit, 5 degrees here, 5 degrees there, but I'm also willing to turn around and go in the opposite direction if necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. I do remember what I was going to say now. I mean, when it comes to minimalism and me being a supporter or, propagating this message, it is beneficial to everyone. Jolene yesterday, what she asked she was like, do you think minimalism is applicable to everyone in the world? And my answer is yes, absolutely. Everyone can afford to be very deliberate with their choices and with their resources. So regardless of whether we have a podcast or whether we have a big social media following or whether we have a documentary, this lifestyle of living deliberately, it's not just good for everyone in the world, but I believe it's necessary for everyone in the world, especially with the population growing, with these non-renewable resources dwindling. It is very important for us as not just a Western society, but everyone in the world to live deliberately. I totally agree with what you're saying though. Like it's not that I don't question the path we're on, meaning I will ask myself, is there a better way for me to add value to people's lives? Is there a better way for me to help people? So yeah, I totally agree in that sense. Like I am constantly asking that question. In fact, we were talking about the deal that we got worked out that we're going to be able to talk about here at the beginning of 2019. That was one of the questions I was asking myself. Like, is this the best use of our time? Is this the best way that we can get help out to other people or add value to other people's lives? And the answer is yeah, like absolutely. Yeah, but we had to be really deliberate about that, right? And so asking those questions is important. If you want better answers, then ask better questions. All right, let's do one more question here, then we'll move to the lightning round. Sophie asks, how did you create your empire? What advice would you give to someone trying to start their own company whilst being minimal and cutting all social media? Well, I mean, social media it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. With social media, I was talking to my doctor about this last night, actually. He was like, I really like what you guys do with social media. But he was like, don't you feel like it's kind of impersonal? You have a social media manager who manages your social media, Jessica, who does a phenomenal job. And my answer to him was, no, it's still us. Like every word that is posted on our social media is ours. We happen to have a curator, and she's literally a curator. She's worked for several art galleries. Like we hired a curator to help us curate and effectively communicate on our social media channels, but also we use the platforms not to drive people back to us for more revenue. We find ways to create value, add value via those platforms, not to say, well, check out our new supplement, or here's a sponsored post, or click onto our website right now. In fact, on Twitter, we use it only for text, right? We don't have any links. We don't have any photos. And that's the best way for us to add value, to communicate with our audience there. For Instagram, it's really beautiful photographs with beautiful words accompanying the photographs. And with Facebook, it's like, well, here's some articles that we find to be useful.
but it's still us. And so it's us sharing us. You and I did a Instagram video this morning talking about the 30-day minimalism game. And, we just have fun with it, but we add value. We don't have an expectation of, well, what's the ROI on this post going to be?
Our expectation isn't always to have fun either. But
it's to add value.
Yeah, absolutely. With any entrepreneurial endeavor, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you find a way to add value to other people's lives. If you can find a way that truly adds values to people's lives, it could be a really nice coffee mug, or it could be a book. Whatever it is, if people find value in it, they're going to be willing to pay you. So for any entrepreneur out there, just going back to this, answering this question head on, how do we create this empire? I don't have a freaking clue, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't even really look at what we have as an empire. I mean, we're able to make a living off of what we do, and we are well known, but there isn't the recipe that, if I could sit here and go back and write the recipe on how we got from minimalism, live a meaningful life, to this second documentary that we have, there's probably a recipe there, but it's not something that anyone can really replicate. They can take pieces from it, they can take ingredients from it and make their own recipe, but doing exactly what you and I have done, that is a really bad expectation for anyone to do. But
just because we didn't do that we didn't take anyone else's exact recipe and say we're going to do that same exact thing,
right?
Because then you're just going to be a copycat.
Right, exactly. So we found ways to add value to people's lives. We never put a money marker on. I mean, in fact, dude, we were talking about opening a coffee shop or like being baristas. It wasn't until I got laid off and people were like, "Why haven't you written a book yet?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, we're the Minimalists. We should write a book."
Right.
I mean, people were asking us for something, so then we wrote a book and we gave that to them. But when you are putting a money-making driver on it, that is not nearly as important as how can I add value to people's lives today? What can I do for someone that they're going to be willing to support me to help them do?
Help people solve problems, the money will follow.
Yeah.
There's a minimal maxim for you. Also, if I go back and look at what we did, money was initially not part of it at all. It was a creative outlet. And
for the first year we didn't sell anything.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about making $23,000 at the year. Most of that was the end of the year because our book came out at the end of the year.
That's true.
And so that's the thing you have to keep in mind. We just what Gary Vee calls punch or jab right hook, is that right? But really he's like, because he has a book called Jab right hook, he's like, if I would have been able to pick the title, it would have actually been jab right hook. And that's the thing, like he works really hard on adding immense value over and over with no asks, and eventually the right hook is like, hey, I put this book out, would you be willing to support me?
Yeah, and it is a symbiotic relationship, man. It's not like this, okay, I'm gonna how can I get all these people to support me so I could do this one big thing to make money, as much as it is when you are adding value to people's lives, the money follows, because when you build that relationship with an audience or with a customer, they start to let you know more of what they want. And if you can kind of keep that symbiotic relationship going, you will always find a way to make money from the value that you are adding to other people's lives.
Because they are willing to support you.
Yes.
Shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you for these questions here. We'd love to hear what you all have to say. So if you have a comment or tip about anything that we've talked about today, including advice for anyone who asked a question, leave us a comment over at 406-219-7839. You can also email a voice memo right to podcast@theminimalists.com, or our favorite comments and tips on a future episode. And stay tuned to the end of this episode for this week's listener comments and tips. Ryan, what time is it?
It is time for our lightning round, where we answer questions from social media.
Indeed, we do. We are at The Minimalists on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And during the lightning round, this is where Ryan and I each do our best to answer every question with just a short, shareable, less than 140-character response. We also put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. And now you can find all of our quotes in one place, thanks to our good friend Jessica Lynn Williams. That place is minimalmaxims.com.
All right, our first question is from Cindy. Cindy wrote, oh, this is good, man. If you came into a large amount of money, say 10 million, I'm assuming she means dollars.
Yes.
Would you still...
Could be 10 million sterling.
Or pesos.
Ooh.
Would you
That changes everything.
If you came into a large amount of money, say $10 million, would you still be a minimalist, or would you slowly find yourself slipping back to more, bigger, and better? Dude, if someone dropped $10 million...
Ferraris for both of us immediately.
Yeah, minimalist Ferraris. If someone had dropped millions of dollars in our lap...
I'd be so grateful.
I'd be so grateful, but dude, I would honestly, I'd become a philanthropist. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd have enough money, you know.
Well, the funny thing is, you're already a philanthropist.
I know, but I guess what I'm saying is it would enable me to be more of a philanthropist. Like, honestly, if I had $10 million, I'd be having a conversation with you about, hey, how can I go around and just start building elementary schools in third world countries that really, really need it?
Yeah. What's the appropriate use of this money? I'll tell you how my life would change if someone dropped $10 million on me. It wouldn't. There would be some ancillary things that would shift. So instead of renting a house, because I can't afford to buy a house in Los Angeles, I would buy a house, a relatively minimalist house, right? And one that was appropriate for me. It may even be in the same building I'm in, because I'm in a condo building. We rent an apartment in a condo building, and so I might just buy an apartment there, right? And what I would realize, like, I would be able to, that way I'm more financially secure, right? And in owning a property. I own a house right now in Dayton, Ohio, a rental property, right? Because I could afford to buy that house. And so, yes, would I buy my own property instead of renting? Yeah, but nothing in terms of my lifestyle would change at all. It's not like we need a studio that's twice the size, Ryan. What are we going to do with a studio twice the size? This is the perfect size studio. We're going to get more sound panels?
Well, you know what's funny, dude? Like, I'm just thinking about any time that I sit down and I start to create something, whatever it is, it's the driver is never, I got to get this done because we got to make money. If I don't get this done, then we're not going to be able to pay the bills.
That's miserable, man.
Yeah, dude. So I would still have the same approach. I mean, it would still be creating. But yeah, if we had millions of dollars, it would just give us the financial means to do some better and bigger philanthropic things. So yes, we would go for better and bigger philanthropic things. Yeah.
And so if I have a pithy answer, I think I said it earlier, but let me try to encapsulate it into a tweet for you, Podcast Sean. It would be something like, money's allowed to be a passenger in the vehicle, but it never sits in the driver's seat. Ooh.
Yeah.
We're coming up with this on the fly.
Nice, dude.
All right. What's the next question, Ryan?
Well, I'll give you my pithy answer.
Oh, go for it.
Podcast Sean. When money is the driver in your life, you're gonna have a really unhappy life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or I guess another way is actually we'll just leave it at that. All right. Next question is from Rick. Rick writes in: is minimalism different in the USA versus remote Ethiopia or remote Congo? I think this is a way of asking is, are poor people, can they be minimalists?
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. So you and I grew up poor, but not remote Congo poor.
No.
So
we grew up America poor, which is rich. I mean, compared to a lot of other third world countries.
It's not even, it doesn't have to do with the richness necessarily. It has to do with safety at that point. Like, I lived in a poor neighborhood that wasn't a dangerous neighborhood. It was, I mean, it's relatively dangerous to
if you weren't looking for
Beverly
trouble,
Hills. Yeah. But, but it's not like Southside Chicago or Over the Rhine, Cincinnati. Well, what Over the Rhine used to be, not anymore.
Right.
Over the Rhine now is Williamsburg, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And so I didn't experience war-torn Civil War South Sudan or something like that. However, let me say this. I think my answer on this has evolved a little bit just because we've had a lot of experience we've gotten emails from people who live in Afghanistan. I'm not talking about troops in Afghanistan. I'm talking about natives of Afghanistan who will send us an email and say, hey, you guys ever going to do a tour stop over here? Really big fan of your blog, and we could really use your message in Afghanistan. Had people from Kenya email us and say, hey, really a fan of the podcast. Is there any chance you're going to come to Kenya to give a talk about helping us deal with consumerism over here? And it's like, oh, we're all human. In fact, primates, you go back to the chimpanzee studies. I think it was NPR, I'm not sure where, but who had the story about chimpanzees when they are, was it bonobos? I'm pretty sure it's chimpanzees because they're way more violent than bonobos. Bonobos just screw each other all the time. Which that's the society we should aspire to be like. Anyway, I think it was the chimps. They're given the bananas. If you give a chimp a banana, they will eat the banana. And, hey, thanks for the banana. I'll eat the banana, right? You give them enough bananas to share with their immediate tribe. They eat a banana first, and they share the bananas with their tribe. You give them a hoard of bananas, like a mountain of bananas, a mound of bananas.
A pile, big pile. Yeah, I'm with you.
They will fight other chimpanzees to the death.
It's crazy.
And I think we do that as humans as well. We want to share. You talked about at the beginning of this episode, kids want to share, they want to help. But at some point, there's some switch that flips, and all of a sudden, we want to hold on to our hoard. We want to protect our hoard. Yeah. And I think no matter where we are, we can benefit from intentionality.
Yeah, that's a good minimal maxim right there.
Maybe. We'll see if it's tweetable.
Yeah, I mean, is it different in the U.S. than it is in remote Ethiopia? I mean, lives are different in Ethiopia than in the U.S. So it does minimalism or whatever ism you want to ask. I mean, of course, it's going to look a little bit different. I mean, if you want to, think about a family who's going through this civil war-torn village, decluttering their closet is going to be the furthest thing from their mind. Safety is going to be number one priority there. So, in these, I'm just going to the extreme here, in a situation where you've got crazy violence happening and, ethnic cleansing going on and things like that. Life's going to look a little bit different there in general. Yeah,
absolutely. And so life's going to be different no matter where you are. If you're living, we're from Dayton, Ohio, and life in Dayton is different from life in California. Yeah. And the thing that I've realized, though, is no matter how many resources you have, if you have the $10 million from the previous question, you want to be deliberate with those. You and I won the lottery. We were born in America. That's like winning the lottery. But guess how many lottery winners end up broke? Yeah. And so you may have won the genetic lottery. I know I certainly didn't win the genetic lottery. but you might still end up broke with whatever lottery you won. There are other people who didn't win any kind of lottery at all who are still able to overcome all of that and thrive. P.S. Ryan, I don't have one more question for you, but this week, Podcast Sean, let's put up the Ask the Minimalists Anything. We did a live stream. We just recorded, I think it was live stream number 14. We're going to take the audio from that and give it out to our Patreon supporters. The video was exclusively for our Patreon supporters as well. So if you want to help keep this podcast 100% advertisement free, then head on over to theminimalists.com/support. And here is a snippet from this week's private, actually we're not calling it a postscript episode, we're just going to call it the Minimalist Private Podcast. Here is a excerpt from this week's private podcast. Maybe the key here is you have gone through a divorce, but you might need to divorce yourself of the trauma and the things that trigger the trauma, because the trauma is not in the things. The memories aren't in the things, but these things are triggering the memories that are inside you. All right, y'all, let's move on to our added value portion of the show. So where Ryan and I each talk about something that has added value to our lives recently. I know you like country music more than I do, way more than I do. I don't like country music at all.
Well, it's just funny. There's only a couple new artists that I like. Yeah. But I like the old, like Johnny Cash, like that type of country I like.
Right. Anyway. More Western than country in a way. Yeah. Well, there is Kelly Musgraves is, right? She's like a household name these days, a famous country star. I don't love her music personally, but her husband, his name is Rustin Kelly, and his new album just came out. It is not country, but it's singer-songwriter that is if there was twang in his voice, you would call it country music, right? Okay. And there's something about it that earlier in the episode, Ryan, you and I were talking about like making bad decisions because of that, what Jordan called fleeting. Happiness is fleeting. Like we do these things, and it's almost like he talks about pill addiction. He talks about alcohol addiction. He talks about sex addiction on this album, and it is called Dying Star. And the album is phenomenal. I was walking around West Hollywood the other night. I couldn't go to. I usually try to go to bed around 8, and I couldn't sleep, so I just was like 9:30, and I just got out of bed and started walking around West Hollywood.
When was this?
Just a few nights ago.
Like Saturday night, like a weekend night.
Yeah,
I'm just
yeah.
crazy,
I was walking down the Sunset Strip.
Oh my god,
listening to this album.
I don't even know how that walking down Sunset could relax you.
Yeah, well, it wasn't about being. It was with this music. It was this weird dichotomy because I was walking down the Sunset Strip, and there's this music sort of like. It's music about making repeated bad decisions, and you're talking about learning from other people's bad decisions. And so maybe at the end of this episode, there's a song in there called Jericho, because at the end of this episode, there's just a little tiny bit of hope at the end of this like album filled of bad decisions and self-inflicted despair. And it's a great album. The music, the writing is beautiful. And this song called Jericho is it's like a great way to end this episode, I think.
Awesome, man. I got an album recommendation. There's a band called Alkaline Trio. You would not like them, Josh. They are a little bit more kind of like Spill Canvas. Yeah,
I wrote about them in my novel, The Spill Canvas.
Yeah, yeah. They are, how would you describe their music? What would you call it?
Too many guitars.
What is this, the Eagles? No, it's not too many guitars. It's just like fast paced, like they have very soft parts, but then it gets very
built
fast.
Up every song.
Yeah, exactly, dude.
Yeah.
They just came out with an album.
I'd call it acoustic guar.
It's actually not too bad.
I'm just kidding. I don't know what that would actually sound like.
Yeah. That's hilarious. Album is called "Is This Thing Cursed?" It's a good album. I mean, you have to like that type of music.
Yeah.
I don't even know what is that genre? Alternative? I guess it would just be alternative.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like alternative is sort of this catch-all phrase.
Alternative
right?
used to be cool. What happened?
I don't know.
It's not like cool anymore.
Yeah, everything else, man. Yeah, everything. You know, the word cool used to be cool, and then it was uncool, and now it's cool again.
Oh my goodness.
It's like Tommy Hilfiger.
Oh my god.
All right. Well, oh yeah, right here, right now. Let's talk about what's going on in the lives of the Minimalists, Ryan. Well, we just did the Today Show interview. That might even be out by the time this episode comes out. If so, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. If not, then we won't. What else is going on in our lives? You're getting ready to travel.
Yeah, heading to Montana today. Actually, going to be
right
out
after
for about
this
10
podcast.
days. Yeah, going to hang out with some family. Man, you know, we can't really talk about the big project that we just signed.
Yeah, let's call it
it's still
Project Z. We'll call it.
Nice. I don't know, man. What else is going on, dude?
That's it. I think if y'all leave here today with one message, we hope it's this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Hi, my name is Carrie Jo Crandall. I'm calling from Kansas City, Missouri. My comment is for Timothy from the Spouses episode. I found minimalism about 6 years ago, and my husband wasn't on board. But I slowly started moving my things around, getting rid of things and excess clutter in my life, to where he saw that I was becoming a happier person. And once I got rid of my things, he started picking up on things that he could declutter in his life. And through conversations, gentle conversations with each other, we were able to condense down pretty much everything that we had. We had lots of conversation, lots of frustrations, but more good conversations through getting rid of the things that I have. And when we started working together as a team, it's when we really started seeing how awesome minimalism was for our marriage. So I just encourage you to just slowly start moving your things around to where she can see that by you getting rid of things that were excess to you, she will notice that you are now happier and that maybe she will want to jump on board to be with you so that you can be happier together.
Hey, this is Jesse from Kansas City, and I just have a quick tip that's sort of a technical version of a packing party. I had too many apps on my phone. I know a lot of us have that same issue. So what I did is I deleted every single one that the operating system would allow me to, and then I would just re-download it as soon as I needed it, and I would just keep those ones that I needed.
Hi, Minimalists. This is Emma calling from Mammoth Lakes, California. Just a tip for people with gift giving. In my family, we have a very large family, and what we've decided to do recently is draw names. So at Thanksgiving, we all pick a name, and we receive one name for a family member. And we exclude some people. Mom and Dad, we always can get them gifts. But as for the siblings, we each pick another sibling's name, and that way we're in charge of only that person's gift. And this just makes it easier because we're able to spend a little more money on something that might bring them a little more value, or maybe be a more exciting experience for them, something they will really appreciate more than just going and buying someone a pair of socks for their stocking.
The Minimalists.